Your life. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah jami'an to all of you. Thank you for coming and thank you for being patient while the technical team were helping us through this. When I was contacted regarding this topic of children and wilayah, I was actually very eager to accept speaking about this and sharing some thoughts with you more than anything at all. More so because the challenges that we're seeing right now, not just in the Western Hemisphere, but everywhere around the world, is almost a common denominator wherever you go now. From family breakups, from social issues, from mental health issues, and it all seems to be stemming from a very young age as well and getting younger. And just discussing, for example, medical patients as well, we're seeing more and more now that young people are on medication that would relieve their so-called anxiety, depression, antidepressants, etc. And so the general construct of society is very much at risk. And when I was asked to share some thoughts on this, it was almost an obligatory thing for us to do. Okay. However, the title of children and instilling love of wilayah into them comes with a few prerequisites. And it's important that we first go from foundational ideologies first and work our way upwards. Before I do that, let me share with you an ayah of the Quran, which is a very pertinent ayah for everyone here, not only for our children, but first and foremost for ourselves. This is in Surah Tahrim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. وقودها الناس والحجارة. In Surah Tahrim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a very stern and direct commandment to all of us that are sitting here and everyone else that is a mukhatab of the Quran. Qu, from waqa, meaning to guard against, protect, have a defense mechanism, set up a boundary so that you are protected. Qu, all of you do it. Qu anfusakum. Set up a boundary, a protective boundary for yourselves. Qu anfusakum. Before we talk about children and before we talk about tarbiyah and before we talk about upbringing, it's imperative to know that first and foremost, Allah is talking to us as parents. If we're sitting here as parents today or grandparents, whatever the case may be, first of all, Allah is talking to us. Qu anfusakum. It's almost an impossibility for us to raise good Shia waiters of the Imam if us as parents haven't got there ourselves. Or at least we haven't exasperated our potential as servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. That is an absolute prerequisite. So Allah talks to us first. Qu anfusakum. Then He says, wa ahlikum nara. Protect yourselves and then protect your family from the fire. He then goes on to explain, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ. Very interesting verse. Wuqud in the language of Arabic means that which ignites, an ignition, almost like fuel of something. He says that fuel in the fire will be constructed of actual mankind. وقودها الناس, man and woman. Certain types of individuals, certain ideologies, certain groups of people, certain systems will become the ignition of the fire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we ourselves would construct. He says, be aware for yourselves and for your family of that fire, that the construct of it is from man and stone, i.e. these two together are the igniters of the fire. They're not the fire itself. No, this ideology, this system can ignite the fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Before we start, let's just look at the overview of what we'll be talking about. So, if I'm not mistaken, the next session is on the 19th of July. Okay, but today we'll talk about 3 or 4 different topics, and then we'll leave it for some questions, revolving around these things. And then next Tuesday, inshallah, we'll get into a bit more of a deeper discussion about tawalla and tabarra, etc., and the dua of Imam al-Sajjad, and more so than anything, practical tips for us to take home. But first, wilayah and tawheed. Yes, we can sit here and share with each other methodologies and perhaps ideas for making our children lovers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, lovers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, lovers of the Ahlul Bayt and the Anbiya, etc. And that will definitely strengthen our relationship with our children to the Imam alayhim salam, no doubt about it. And that is, of course, ibadah. That is adhering to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one denies that. In actual fact, not only are the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam teaching us the way to get to Allah, no, they are themselves the way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our deen, our religion, our manhaj, our ideology, Islam, you want to say it, is centered around the Imam. It's centered around the Holy Prophet. Our deen is Imam-centric. For you and I to be God-centric, we have to actually be Imam-centric. And it has its own depths and its own discussions. But in order for us to develop our children's love for Ahlul Bayt, and for them to be lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, we first need to have a solid foundation. We need to have a groundwork that's been built from upwards. Okay. If we were to build love of wilayah, love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam on sand, just expect that later on when social problems comes about, when questions come about our theology, expect it to crumble because it hasn't been built properly. So prior to speaking about wilayah and how we can incorporate wilayah into our children, again, the prerequisite of that wilayah is nothing other than tawheed. And this is one of the main messages for tonight I want to drive home. You and I cannot make our children lovers of Ahlul Bayt until they first acknowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until they first acknowledge love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until they acknowledge Islam, i.e. the fundamental objective of Islam is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has to be there. Not as a substitute for wilayah. No, it comes hand in hand. But this is an absolute priority. This is primary. Nothing can be built, i.e. nothing about wilayah and love for Ahlul Bayt can be built if tawheed is not there. It cannot exist. Even if you look at the seerah of the Prophet or the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt, it was always built on this foundation of tawheed before they went to love of Ahlul Bayt, love of A'imma. If you look at the main companions of Ahlul Bayt. In Surah Baqarah, we see this. Yeah, we see this. We recite it all the time. But let me just try and develop this relationship for you, and then inshallah we'll move on. So in Surah Baqarah, after Ayatul Kursi, what does it say? فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. Interesting. Look at the ayah correctly. How many times have we recited Ayatul Kursi? But perhaps we haven't paid attention to this point. It says, فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. And whoever has kufr towards that system or those people who are the taghi. Taghi means someone who's transgressed the boundary of Allah. Whoever disbelieves in that group of people, فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ, and then it says وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, and then they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. Two-step scenario or two-step method for us to hold on to the tight rope of Allah or to the tight clasp of Allah. One, first we need to have a form of bara'ah. We need to have a form of dissociation from a system that have transgressed the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do we say? We have Muharram coming up. What do we say in Ziyarat Ashura? بَرِئْتُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَإِلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُمْ وَمِنْ أَشْيَاعِهِمْ وَأَتْبَاعِهِمْ وَأَوْلِيَائِهِمْ. Ashya' from shaya'a. Those ideologies or those things that propagate, those things that represent something or someone or some system. First, I need to get rid of this. First, I need to have a detox. Me as a parent living in the 21st century, the Quran tells us first, you want to do proper tarbiyah of your children, first you need a detox. You need to get rid of anything that is non-godly. فَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. First do kufr of taghut, of this system that is anything other than deen. Pure detox. Then وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. Iman billah and everything that Islam comes with it. Wilayah being an absolute essential of the deen. Just like Imam Rida alayhi salam says that لا كلمة لا إله إلا الله حسني. The expression of Tawheed, of La ilaha illallah, is Allah's fortress. فَمَنْ دَخَلَ حِسْنِي أَمِنَ مِنَ عَذَابِي. Whoever enters the fortress of Allah's Tawheed, they are sanctified from, they're at safety from Allah's punishment. But then he says, Imam Rida alayhi salam says what? That we, the Ahlul Bayt, or me, I as the Imam, I'm a condition of that. No doubt about it that this part here, وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, it comes with its terms and conditions, i.e. that of wilayah. Or for example, we see in Ziyarat Jami'a Kabira, where it says, وَمَنْ وَحَّدَهُ قَبِلَ عَنْكُمْ. Whoever performs real tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by default they have clung on to the Ahlul Bayt. Real tawheed enables your children to become lovers of wilayah. This is what Imam Hadi alayhi salam is teaching us. وَمَنْ قَصَدَهُ تَوَجَّهَ بِكُمْ. Whoever really has that intention of their children or themselves, أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا, whoever has the intention of themselves and their children really trying to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that by default they have already looked towards Ahlul Bayt. This is a synchrony, a simultaneous relationship. Okay, so if one has enabled their child to have proper tawheed, by default they will accept wilayah, no doubt about it. But it can't work the other way. Just by imparting onto them love for Ahlul Bayt or love for Imama or love for Imam Hussein or Imam Ali, later on they will be called out as children. You and I, everyone sitting here, some of you are very close friends, some are family. We've all had the same experiences growing up in school, in universities, in colleges. We will be called out, or our children will be called out, if our tawheed is not strong enough. If our ability to prove Allah theologically, through love, whatever you want to do, our ideological understanding has to be strong for them to be real lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. There's so many ahadith about this synchrony in relationship, but I'll suffice with that. Before we look at the practical things and how we impart this to our children, I have to stop us in our tracks here and say one thing. If our ideology of Allah, or even forget Islam for the time being, our ideology of knowledge, of tarbiyah, of culture, of civilization is slightly skewed, it will have an effect, direct effect on how we raise our children. There's no doubt about it. Okay, what do I mean by that? Think about raising your children now as that tip of the iceberg. Okay, what you and I choose to do with our children, how we choose to speak to them, what we choose to speak to them about, where we choose to put them, in which nursery, which width, in which school, in which system, what things they watch, what things they listen to, who they hang around with, which family friends I have. That's all at the tip of the iceberg. Okay. It comes, that comes as an outer effect of our makeup, our theological makeup. Okay. So let's track back slightly. Let's go underwater for just a moment and go back to how things are being panned out right now. Let me share something with you. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, in London School of Economics, one of the best degrees out there right now is PPE. Can anyone like confirm that? Montezero, you're nodding your head, right? So PPE is philosophy, politics, and economics, right? A while ago, Western philosophy had a distinct shift away from what old philosophy was. Okay. So old philosophy used to be firstly about existence, about proving or disproving God, and about how the existence is either singular or multiple in the outer world. Okay. And studying or learning about existence was able to penetrate and to allow us to understand our genetic makeup as the human being. Once I understand what existence is and I'm able to understand what the human being is, I now am able to understand the faculties of the human being. What is required for a human being? Is it just material? Is it material plus spiritual, or is it just spiritual on its own? Okay. Until and unless I haven't discussed existence properly from a philosophical angle, I won't be able to understand the makeup of the human being. Once I understand the makeup of a human being to be just material, now how does that demonstrate out into public? It demonstrates like this, that you will be a hedonistic society. You will be a society based on consumerism. Or, for example, if you were to flip it, if it was just to be an understanding of the human being just spiritual, then again, it will be another extreme. But if I've understood philosophically what existence is, and thereafter how the insan is made up, now I can start to construct an ideology or a form of tarbiyah, a form of raising and activating faculties in our society for our children in a way based on the proper ideology, the correct philosophical understanding of the human being. Now, when I do that, I'm able to construct a social science, or I'm able to construct a society and thereafter a civilization that the whole of humankind needs to be gravitating towards. And that is where we are right now in the 21st century. And that's what's been happening for the last God knows how many centuries, where civilizations are at war with one another. Okay. What's interesting is recently in the Western world, they've skipped the discussion on existence. They've skipped the discussion now on things revolving around God. Okay, where has it gone? Philosophy, politics, and economics is just trying to construct a social methodology or system in order for a society to progress based on a very limited understanding of the insan. Okay, why am I saying all these things? It's important for you and I as parents to understand where is the foundation of our tarbiyah going to be coming from. It has to go back down to understanding who we are as insan, who we are as human beings. And that can only come when we go to the next slide, which would be an epistemological understanding. What is the truth? What is knowledge? Where do I get that from? Okay. So once we dig deeper under that iceberg and we uncover what's actually going on, now we're able to construct something for our system, our tarbiyah system. Okay, these are just a few examples. I'm not going to bore you too much, and my notes of these people are under here, so just give me a moment. So when you and I send our children to school here, be it primary school or secondary school or whatever, college, university, you have to understand that there's been lots of thought going into how we're supposed to have our educational system, how we're supposed to raise our children, forget educational system, how we're supposed to raise our children, what are we supposed to do with them, how are we supposed to behave with them, okay? Certain individuals like Kant, or for example, this French this French professor, Lebon, or the American one, John Dewey. Each one of these guys had their own philosophical understanding as to how tarbiyah for children should be. So just in a nutshell, for example, Le Bon was all about allowing your child to express themselves without having any boundaries whatsoever for the first 4 years, allowing them to understand how they function materialistically, and then shaping your tarbiyah or shaping your upbringing based on how they've been in the first 4 years. So it's a completely subjective thing. Okay? Or for example, Dawah. Dawah is very much an influence on how the modern day Western world, or now the Eastern world as such, is raising their children. Okay, everything very free, everything very much no criteria, no what we call boundaries, no set methodology. Okay, it's very fluid, very flexible. Okay, all such individuals have had a profound effect on how we're going to be raising our children. Right? You need to understand, or we need to understand, that the social construct for our children, everything that's produced for our children, is going to be based on an ideology from such people. Okay. Now that will be okay, that will be absolutely fine if we know what they believed in, if we know what their iceberg was underneath the water. How were they thinking about insan? Did they have that spiritual aspect in place, or was it just a physical one? Was it just about consumerism? Okay, it's very important for us to see where this has come from. It does beg the question though, and that is, well, how do I know what system is actually correct? Okay. Maybe Dewey was the right way of doing things. Maybe Le Bon was the right way of doing things. Maybe Immanuel Kant was the right way of doing things. How do we know? We haven't heard much of this from the Mimbar. We haven't heard much of this, for example, in books. And that comes from basically actually asking ourselves the question, what therefore is the truth? And what therefore is correct? Okay, this comes down to an epistemological discussion. Where have people got their knowledge from? What is knowledge actually? Okay, and this comes down to a critical discussion for parents for our own journey with respect to our children. And that is the following: that until and unless you and I, as parents, are not comfortable with ourselves and the truth and with our deen and with Islam, at least from a very summarized perspective on our aqa'id, on our theology, please do not expect your children to start believing in that as well. It's an impossibility. You and I have to be solid, at least in the very basics of our deen. We have to be comfortable to say, you know what? I believe in a religion whereby all of the truth belongs to Allah. I believe in a religion whereby Allah has given all of that truth to all of his anbiya, and especially to his final one, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I have to be comfortable with the fact that when it comes to raising my children, when it comes to imparting certain ideologies to my children, that when I have got certainty, after I've got certainty and it's been proven that this is what Allah wants from me, I have to be comfortable that that is what I'm going to impart on my child. I have to be comfortable saying that, yes, what Islam says is correct. Not I've been hearing something recently called liberal Islam. Has anyone heard this terminology before? Liberal Islam. Just put your hands up if you've heard this. Liberal Islam. It's becoming more and more common, right? So it's not my mic. It's okay. Liberal and Islam. One means fluid and flexible. Another means submissive and non-flexible. Okay, it's the biggest oxymoron we're seeing. Since, as they say in Gujarati, since Agar time, right? Liberal Islam, it just doesn't fit with one another. Okay, I think it's okay. I cannot form a self-level of confidence in myself or with my children unless I'm comfortable with what Islam has said. Okay, and if we need to go back to where the truth lies, etc., that's your own journey. Before you start doing tarbiyah of your children, that has to be done for yourselves. Okay. from different input. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. If you guys are okay, I'll carry on. Is it okay? So I've left practical tips for the next discussion, but just in brackets here. Okay. You will find after your child has experienced all the what we call empirical data outwardly, okay, all the material stuff outwardly, one of the most common questions your child, maybe after the age of 4, 5, 6, one of the most common questions your child will come out with is why? Okay, that was good. What happened? One of the most common questions is why? Okay. So, for example, let's say that you one of the most common questions that your child will ask is why. Okay, and if you can be comfortable enough, first with yourselves and thereafter to impart onto your child, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His knowledge is absolute, okay, and what we have understood to be certainly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what I'm believing in, and that is why I'm offering you as my child, okay. Suddenly, that why will be answered with at least a good level of confidence, okay. I may not understand that, and inshallah we'll come to an example from the Quran whereby there may not have been a philosophical understanding of what we're doing, okay, but the Quran nonetheless praises that methodology, and we'll come to that in a second. Okay, we need to have that confidence as parents that what we're believing in is correct, and when we tell it to our child, or when we impart that to our child, that this understanding is from here, and this is from Ahlul Bayt, and this is from Rasulullah, and that knowledge that they have is ultimately from Allah, and Allah is absolutely knowledgeable, suddenly that child of yours, or even yourselves, feel very comfortable now. Not that there's a question mark, maybe this is correct, maybe this is incorrect, maybe this could be in a state of flux in the next 30 years or not. Your child will feel very comfortable. You yourselves will be very comfortable as parents to say, you know what, I'm certain that this is from Allah, and whatever is from Allah has to be correct, in spite of us not understanding. Okay, so this is why like the epistemological discussion of knowledge and where we get our knowledge from is so important for us as parents. Okay. I've purposely not put the English here, so I would like you, if you are able to, is just to get your Quran out either on your phone or your Quran in your bags or whatever. And if you move with me in this journey on 3 ayat of the Quran, and then we'll stop there for question and answer. But this may take a little while. So this is Surah Al Imran, verse 34. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of context to this. The importance of having Tawheed within our children actually starts from before birth, okay, way before birth. And this is a story of the mother of Maryam salamullahi alayha. As you know, the mother of Maryam salamullahi alayha was said to be, her name was Hannah, and she was supposedly to have the Messiah of the Jews of that time. Okay. Look carefully at the relationship that this pious lady had with Allah prior to giving birth. So this is way before raising your children, making them lovers of Allah, lovers of Wilayah. This is the mindset that a parent, specifically a mother, is having according to the Quran. And let's see where the Quran goes with this. Okay. So this is verse 34. It says, if Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, if قالت امرأة عمران ربي إني نذرت لك ما في بطني محرر. The mother of Maryam salamullahi alayha, firstly, is someone who has communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She speaks with Allah. She enjoys this munajat with Allah. She speaks to Allah about what's happening in her affairs. First and foremost, we want to become muwahhideen, we want to become people comfortable with our relationship with Allah. We need to be speaking with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intimately. This is intimate conversation. Okay. She says, Ya Allah, that which I have in my womb, I am designating it to you. I'm doing another, that this child of mine will be dedicated to you. Of course, she was dedicating her child to the temple of the time, right? However, the Quran, like Imam Baqir alayhi salam says, Tajri kama tajra shams, that the Quran moves, it revolves, it rotates the same way that the sun orbits. Okay. 35? Okay, apologies. What was the ayah 34? Ah, okay. Yeah. So ayah 35. Thank you. She's speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She's dedicating her child to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, for the temple. But you and I in the 21st century, this is telling us, can we have the same ideology? Can we not have the same ideology whereby when we see, for example, our daughters or our sons, that we have this understanding, I'm raising my child and I'm going to dedicate my child to Allah. I'm going to dedicate my child to Rasulullah. I'm going to dedicate my child to the Imam of the time. In his service, in the service of Allah, to make them real muwahhideen, is speaking to us. However, look what she says. Not only is she trying her best, she's dedicating her children to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but she requests from Allah His acceptance. Okay, very important. We can do whatever we want. We can struggle and strive in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we also have to make dua for this to be accepted from Allah. فَتَقَبَّلْ مِنِّي إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Okay, so she's speaking to Allah from before. When she gives birth, look what she says. فَلَمَّا وَضَعَتْهَا قَالَتْ رَبِّ إِنِّي وَضَعْتُهَا أُنْثَى. Amazing, right? The previous verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, As-Sami' al-Alim. He's fully aware of what she's going to give birth to, yet she's telling Allah, Ya Allah, I've given birth to a daughter, not a son. Of course, she was expecting the Messiah to be from her loins, okay, from her womb. Allah knows what's happening, yet she's speaking to Allah. وَإِنِّي سَمَّيْتُهَا مَرْيَمَ وَإِنِّي أُعِذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتِهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Third point, when you and I are raising our children, when you and I are raising our offspring, we're not just raising, for example, Muhammad Jawad, Hassan Mehdi, Safina Zahra. We're not just raising these people. We're raising progenies. We're raising generations to come. We're raising the 10 generations down the line. Okay, you'll see what Zakaria salamullahi alayhi says in just a moment. So she's saying, Inni sammaytuha Maryama wa inni u'idhuha bik wa dhurriyyatiha. I'm placing Maryam and her progeny in your hands. I'm safeguarding them with your sanctity. When we're doing tarbiyah, when we're changing our ideologies, when we're exercising these new things, or when we're trying very hard for our children, try and have this in mind, that you're not just doing it for your children, you're doing it with 10 generations in line. There's much thawab in this. There's much thought in this. It's a long-term project. It's going to be difficult, but this is something that down the line is going to be a benefit for all generations. Then what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He responds, فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commends this type of ideology, commends this type of behavior that this mother of Maryam salamullahi alayha had. And He accepts it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He gets involved now. See, when we work for Allah, it says Allah gets involved now, and He accepts this with a great acceptance, and He helps her raise Maryam salamullahi alayha to such a level that she can give birth to a prophet. Okay, this is the ideology that the mother of a a son or daughter that is going to be salih has. Okay. The story gets a bit more interesting though, and look carefully at what happens with Zakaria. Zakaria alayhi salam, as you know, was barren, old age, no progeny to look forward to. Okay, many people were mocking him, etc. And he was basically out of time. What happens? He sees Maryam salamullahi alayha with fruits. At summertime, she would be getting winter fruits. At wintertime, she would be getting summer fruits. And it says, كُلَّمَا دَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا زَكَرِيَّا. Every moment that Zakaria entered upon Maryam, he would see such miraculous behavior, such miraculous fruits that were there. And only once in the Quran have I seen this so far, where it says, the ayah starts with هُنَالِكَ. At that exact location, Zakaria decides to do one thing. Maryam sallallahu alayhi is what, in her early teens. Okay, Zakaria is a prophet of Allah. Yet he takes ibrah, he takes lesson from this very pious lady, the one that is guaranteed paradise. He goes to that point, and there he makes a dua for his progeny. Okay, look what he says. He doesn't ask for a son or daughter because he's in a state of despair now. Okay, rather he asks for his progeny, and it says, if someone can read the next one, this is a bit small here. رَبِّ هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً. Yeah, if I've read that correctly. Yeah, is that correct? Can anyone confirm that? Yeah. This becomes small on the screen, so I can't really see. So it says, رَبِّ هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً. Look at the foresight that we should be having. Progeny. He's thinking progeny. What type of progeny? Doesn't just want any type of progeny. A progeny that is طَيِّبَةً. Pure progeny, without problems, without ideological issues, without moral problems. Right? Zakaria is asking for a pure progeny. So prior to us having or even trying for children, we need to try and adopt this mindset, a monotheistic, a muwahhidi type of mindset, and something that's looking long term. The second ayah is perhaps a bit more profound for those people who have children. This is Surah Luqman, verse number 13 onwards. If you can just go to it. Surah Luqman is Surah 31, and this will be verse 13 onwards. Okay, this is a discussion that Luqman alayhi salam has with his child. So now we had pre-birth and the infancy. Early childhood is now sort of the second stage that we're going to try and discuss here. Okay. First of all, the Quran says that Luqman was speaking to his child. Okay. There is a new movement nowadays for this liberal type of understanding when it comes to morality, or for example, how Le Bon says it, and that is to allow your children to be how they wish to be. There's no more reprimanding, even if that's in a good way. There's no more indication towards that which is good and that which is evil. Yet the Quran here is showing us that Luqman is doing one thing. Number one, he's talking to his child. Number two, he's giving him maw'idah. He's giving him a goodly word. Very important. How much are we talking to our children? Day in, day out. Not just about random stuff. No, about moral compass. About Allah. About deen. About akhirah. And in the second session, we'll hopefully share some practical tips about how to speak to children, what to speak to them about, and how to do it. Okay, but look, Luqman is speaking to his child here. إِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ, in the state that he was advising him. Okay, whilst he was advising him, يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. Now, if I was to have like shorts and miswak, I would say, yeah, just shirk. Don't do shirk in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's it. Okay, but if you were to look a little bit closely at the word shirk, shirk is different from kufr. Okay, kufr is when you have Allah and you swap him for something else. That's kufr. Okay, shirk is when Allah exists and now you are partnering Allah, not just with something that you worship. No, it could be even an ideology. It could be a system. It could be another opinion. That's also shirk. Luqman alayhi salam here is telling his child the system of Allah is not to be gone against. Okay, He's raising his child in a monotheistic system when he says, La tushrik billah. Not just what we consider shirk to be in a normal understanding. Okay? That trickles down to you and I very, very importantly. Every single opinion that is not of Islam's, that's considered shirk when it comes to our children. Anything we're allowing our children to be anti-Islamic, even for the slightest, and what Islamic is, that's a different discussion altogether. We can get there at one stage. But anything that is allowed to penetrate into our children that is slightly non-Islamic, the Quran comes and tells us in the conversation of Luqman here, La tushrik billah. Why? He says, Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. It's nothing other than oppression. Now, question. Isn't it appropriate for us to be free and give freedom to the insan, freedom to our child? Okay? The answer would be yes, it is appropriate and it is adequate to give freedom to our children. Okay? But freedom with an iceberg that's just about our physical being is one thing, and freedom to a child or to the society where the iceberg includes physicality as well as spirituality is something else. It's completely different. Okay? So when we're saying it's a dhulmun azim, it's an oppressive thing that you're doing by putting shirk to Allah or systems in place of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's based on that proper understanding of what insan is made up of. Okay? The Quran goes on to say, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ, advising the insan about the role of parents. When would you and I become respectful parents or respected parents or dignified parents? Look at this, how beautiful it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing the conversation of Luqman and his child. Okay? Then he takes a break and then he shows humankind how important parents are. And then he carries on the conversation of Luqman. You know what he's trying to say? I was reading what Allama Tabatabai was saying in his tafsir. This importance of parents and how their value is so important in the deen of Allah is in the midst of Luqman's conversation. You and I can be dignified parents. You and I can be parents that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks big of as high status, as high value, if you and I can impart to our child a monotheistic system. That is when you and I become respectful parents. Yes, the very basics of it is one thing. But how can you and I become sharaf, musharraf? How can you and I become sanctified people, angelic beings as parents? We can do that if we were to impart real Tawheed to our children, the real system of Islam to our children. That's when Allah shoves in our face, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ. Amazing. He carries on. If you go to verse 16, he talks to his child about how Allah functions. Again, another practical tip. How are we speaking to our children? Are we talking to our children about Allah, first of all, about our deeds, about akhirah, about how everything that you and I do, every single action that you and I do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring it for us. It's called tajassum al-a'mal, that He will make us see it on the Day of Judgment. Luqman alayhi salam is talking to his child about such things. Question, when was the last time you and I spoke to our children about whatever you do, you will get to see it on the Day of Judgment? Forget that. How much do we speak to our children about akhirah? How much do we speak to our children about death? Are they okay with it? Are they comfortable with it? You know, one of our teachers a long time ago in the Hawza, he said that when you and I study or when you and I teach theology in Islam, we teach it wrong, in a wrong methodology. So I said, how's that? He said, what do we do? Tawheed, Adalat, Nubuwwat, Imamat, Qiyamat, right? He said, you know what the Quran does? It teaches Tawheed, Qiyamah, Tawheed, Qiyamah, Tawheed, Qiyamah, Tawheed, Qiyamah, bit of Nubuwwah, bit of Imamah, bit of Nubuwwah, back to Tawheed, Qiyamah. He says, this teacher, he was saying that Allah teaches where you were in the beginning, and then He shows you where your end destination, your final destination is. And that is what makes the human being comfortable. If I was to tell you, Irfan, come with me, I'm going to take you somewhere. I don't tell you where you're going for years. I'm just driving you somewhere. I don't know. Okay? Like, where are we going, man? Or if I was to say, no, we're going to start from here and we're going to end at that place. It's going to be a rocky ride, but sit tight, strap your belt on, we're going. You'll be comfortable. You know where you're going. with a child as well, or with not just small children, adolescents, young children. If you and I are able to impart the final destination where we initially came from, then the rocky road in the middle suddenly becomes a bit more comfortable for us. Luqman alayhi salam here is talking about final destination. Everything you and I do, every a'mal that you and I do, وَإِن تَكُ, he says, إِن تَكُ مِثْقَالَ حَبَّةٍ مِّنْ حَرْدَلٍ فَتَكُونُ فِي صَخْرَةٍ أَوْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ أَوْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَأْتِ بِهَا اللَّهُ. Every single small thing, even if it's in the darkness of a desert or on the earth, Allah will bring it and He will make you see it. Allah will hold it for you, accountable, or He will give you that gift of it. Luqman is teaching his child, listen, man, the journey is not just going to end here. You need to work hard. Everything you'll be able to see on the Day of Judgment. He's moving his child in a ukhrawi environment. Ya bunayya, aqim as-salah. Perform your salah. We'll talk about how to practically do this in the next one. وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Have you heard this recently? And I don't mean to mock, right? I mean, I've grown up in that. The great thing about growing up in the same community is that people can't say to you, yeah, but you don't know how it was, man. You haven't been through it. You haven't been to the same schooling. You haven't been to. We've all been there, right? Have you noticed nowadays how don't say anything, you can't judge that person? Everyone heard this before? One of the main crux of our furu' ad-din has been stripped away from us, even as Muslims, even in Muslim countries, even in Islamic countries. It's not just the Western countries, even in Muslim and Islamic countries. Amr bil ma'roof and nahy anil munkar has been stripped away from us as Muslims. Yet Luqman alayhi salam says here, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Then what does he say? وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ. When you do this, you have to be patient. Why? Oh, you're going to have a tough time. You're going to have a real tough time. Luqman is giving this spiritual confidence to his son, though, saying, listen, this is good. Okay? Go towards this. This is the deen of Allah. This is what He wants from you. Enjoin good, forbid evil. Question, how are our children going to enjoin good and forbid evil if they don't even know what it is? It's an impossible uphill task. That means you and I, as parents, need to impart to our children what is good and what is evil. That means you and I need to be comfortable about knowing that X is good and Y is evil. You have to be comfortable with that. Not liberal Islam, real Islam. Okay? I'm glad there's less people, alhamdulillah, today, because I would have got a big backlash here, yeah? But this is important. It's really important. Alhamdulillah. إِنَّ ذَلَكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Very, very difficult. You need strong determination for this. Okay? Now, here's the ayah for those people who say, don't judge. Don't judge. Don't judge other people. Okay? Luqman alayhi salam couples this وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, etc. by saying, but at the same time, don't be arrogant. Do it for the right cause. Do it for the sake of Allah. Don't judge people, but do those actions. He says, وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. This is a kinaya in Arabic. We'll say this is a kinaya. This is a tell that person over there, and this person will listen as well. Okay. In Farsi they say, "Bedar bigi divaram mishnabe." Tell the door, the wall will hear it too, or the other way around. Okay. This is one way of saying, do the aqim as-salah, do the amr bil ma'roof, do the nahy anil munkar, but at the same time, make sure that you're not arrogant about it. Do it for the sake of Allah. It's got nothing to do with you. You're upholding the deen of Allah. Let's go to the final ayah here. Okay, these are for young. I tried to split it up, so this is more so for the young adults now. Look carefully at Surah Safat, which is Surah 37, verse 101, and then I'll stop. I don't know how long is left until Salah here. How long do we have? 15 minutes. Okay, inshallah. Of course, the story goes is about Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. Okay, Surah Safat, Surah 37, verse 101. As you know, Ibrahim alayhi salam was in a similar position to Zakaria. No children, no lineage, nothing going on. He was barren, so too was his wife Hajar and Sarah, of course. Okay? What happens is that Ibrahim alayhi salam finally is granted a child. Ismail comes, and the whole story of the sacrifice and leaving Hajar there, and for example, Ibrahim not turning back and just trusting in Allah. And then she asks Ibrahim, is this because Allah has asked you to do it, etc., etc. And they're left in Mecca. And then afterwards, he comes back. Okay, so fast forward the story, almost like a film, go a little bit into the future of this story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. What happens? When Ibrahim alayhi salam returns, finally, and he speaks with Ismail, he tells him about the dream that he keeps having. Of course, Ibrahim alayhi salam sees in his dream that he's supposed to sacrifice his son. But look carefully at what the Quran says, because it's very, very pertinent to you and I today. Okay? Allah gives him glad tidings of a patient and righteous son. And the ayah says, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعَى قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي الْمَنَامِ أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. What a statement to say to your son, huh? It says, oh my child, certainly I am seeing in my dream that I am slaughtering you. Tell me, what do you take from that? What's your opinion? Okay, first thing, that with elder children or with elder young adults is the very key characteristic of consultation. Very important to speak to your children as young adults, especially when the hadith after the age of 14 years of age, very important. The hadith of 7 years and 7 years, the final part of that hadith, let me just remind myself what it said, the final part of that hadith, where the Holy Prophet ﷺ says that in the end, he says here, just recite salawat, please. In the ages between 14 and 21, that child of yours, depending on the first 7 and the second 7 years, will either be your enemy or he'll be your friend. Okay, the final third of those 7 years. Look at the way Ibrahim alayhi salam is speaking to his child. Consultation. What's your opinion? What do you think about this? Okay, what do you take from this that I'm seeing? Now, if he'd raised him in a materialistic way, in a way that he doesn't recognize Allah, he doesn't know anything about akhirah, what would his response be? Well, we all know his response would be, what are you on about, man? You want to sacrifice me? Get out of here. I'm not going to sit here for you. No. Ibrahim alayhi salam says what? He says, what do you think? Ismail responds. What does he say? Look at the way that Ismail alayhi salam speaks in the Quran so beautifully, linguistically, how Allah has pieced it together. He says, Ya abati, if'al ma tu'mar. If'al ma tu'mar. Oh my father, do exactly what you've been ordered. Okay? When you and I read that, what do we read it as? Do what you're told. Okay? But look what the Quran is telling us. The Quran is telling us that being submissive in a blind way is sometimes important. As long as your epistemological understanding of where knowledge comes from, what is haqq, what is truth, what is actually the reality of life, sometimes it's okay to submit to that which you don't understand. If'al bima tu'mar, if'al ma tu'mar. Perform that which you have been ordered. What does Ali al-Akbar say to Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura or just before? Alasna alal haqq. Qala bala. Ali Akbar alayhi salam says, Father, are we not on the correct path? He's understood that morality, truth is not objective. It's not subjective, rather it's objective. Truth is a reality. Sometimes when I see a command of Allah, have I been able to accept that one for myself as a parent? Have I been able to impart to my child that, you know what, if this is certainly from the deen and you don't understand it, that's okay. That's fine. Sometimes we won't be able to uncover the philosophy of deen. That's why we're orphans right now. We're waiting for the Imam to come back and explain to us the philosophy of waking up 2:30 in the morning, splashing water on our faces while we're half asleep and praying 2 rak'ah salah and going back to sleep. It's okay. Sometimes we won't realize the philosophy of things. Ismail alayhi salam says, Father, do exactly what you've been commanded. But then what does he say? Satajiduni insha'Allah min as-sabirin. So amazing. He says, you will find me with the permission of Allah. Look how he's linking everything, even Ismail alayhi salam's action. You will find me, insha'Allah, min as-sabirin. I will have sabr. These things are difficult. Again, what can we teach our children? This road is a rocky road. Sometimes you'll be tested big time. We have to empower them for patience. Patience in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very important. Okay? Ibrahim thereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him as being from the muhsineen. And this is where thereafter he gains the status of Imam. Okay? So these are ideological things that the Quran, I wanted to just focus on these 3 ayat of the Quran from an ideological perspective, how we can understand our tarbiyah, or how we can build our child upbringing on a Quranic ideology, on an ideology based on Tawheed, based on monotheism. And with this prerequisite, we can go to teaching them or encouraging them or empowering them with the love of Allah, love of therefore Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and therefore becoming real mawali of the 12th Imam. I will leave it there and suffice for that, and inshallah on the next session next Tuesday we'll go into the practical tips, look at the dua of Imam as-Sajjad alayhi salam a bit more closely, what Imam as-Sajjad alayhi salam says about upbringing, and also we will look at a few other practical tips as well. I'll allow some questions. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but if there are, then we can do that and then stop for salah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. Sure. Live stream, so yes, okay. So the live stream is on, and if there are any questions online, then people can post their questions online as well, and we can try and read that out. Yes, please. Alaykum salam.
How do I sort of juggle that dynamic, keep those kinds of teaching my children that it's important to love your family because they are great people, but also balancing that with the day-to-day of our beliefs are different. I sometimes don't have the confidence that I don't want to do what my sister's done with my hubby and herself, and they're very judgmental and which isn't Islamic at all. But how do I know that I'm not going too far the other way and exposing them to an environment rather than asking God to protect them? But how do I get that balance? How do I know how to get that balance right?
Sure. First of all, can we recite a salawat, please? Thank you for sharing your journey. The first thing I would say is there has to be a balance of both. In one sense, your children need to appreciate and accept that, again, truth is truth, haqq is haqq, and batil is batil. So they need to be on the understanding that we do have various ideologies, we do have various people with different understandings. However, that which we have chosen is correct, without being judgmental to other people. You have to empower them with that type of spiritual confidence. They have to know that what they are practicing or what you're practicing as parents is the correct path, and what they are thereafter going to be embarking upon is correct. Okay? You have to practically find ways of doing that. Inshallah, on the next session, maybe some of the things that we share, it could be helpful for your children, especially at the age of 10 and 16. However, at the same time, there also needs to be a level of understanding from their side and from your side as well. Often, for example, I'll give you sort of an everyday example with my own children. Okay, so when we come back from Iran to England, especially like the last 2 summers, many times my elder has asked me, why are people doing X, Y, and Z, even from amongst the Muslim community? Okay. Or, for example, why are some people not Muslim? Okay, because whatever we've told them is based on the fact that being submissive to Allah is all about love. Okay, and we've categorized this that people who are Muslims and submissive to Allah, they simply are a higher end of the spectrum of love. So it takes that judgmental thing outside of them. Leave that for later. That's when they're adults, they can think for that for themselves, not to be judgmental about people. Rather, you want to put them on a spectrum of love. These people are X, and therefore they are loving Allah more, for example. Okay, and that's okay, and we can appreciate that. And whether if people wish to debate that point or not, that's up for debate. But if you were to look at it properly, like if you were to look at it with the system of there being a reality to truth, then submission equals love, and love equals submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we saw like in the story of Ismail. Yeah? So you have to, I would say, give both wings to this thing to fly, right? You have to couple them with the spiritual confidence of them being on the right path. And at the same time, you need to allow them to see that there's a spectrum here of submission, spectrum here of love, and therefore they need to amalgamate that together. However, I would say something a bit more important, which is a bit less relevant to you as a family. And I would say that it is actually the responsibility of the wider community to become a family to such people. This is really, really important. This is absolutely critical. That kids the same age, mothers and fathers the same age, there has to be a larger network now of helping one another in the pathway of Allah and the pathway of Wilayah. In one of the last sentences of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam's dua, amazing, inshallah we'll share that next week, but let me just open it up for you just now. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam makes a long, lengthy dua for his children. Very lengthy and very beautiful and very apt, very pertinent. But in the end, he says that, and Ya Allah, grant this for my children and for all of the mu'mineen's children as well. He's looking out for the mu'mineen, the wider community. Everyone who wants to be on this path with his children, like the same way methodology for his children, he's praying for those children as well. That becomes our responsibility as outsiders of this family. Okay, so part of it is your own struggle, part of it is your own thing as an intricate family, and part of it is a wider community as well. We need to come together, even for people who haven't been a Mustabsir, people who are born Shia. There needs to be a wider community of parents that are on this path. A few years ago, even I spoke to someone here. They were saying, feeling very lonely, because the way we want to raise our children, it's almost like ostracizing us from the community. Amazing, like how is that even possible? And therefore we need to work together as much as we can to support each other, spiritual support, brotherhood, sisterhood, in order for this to become a bit easy for everyone. Okay, thank you for your time. Inshallah, we'll hopefully see you guys next week, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.